That didn't change while you was gone. Okay, one more time. At this time, I'd like to call this city commission workshop to order at 5:35 p.m. All right, with that, we will stand, we'll do our pledge of allegiance, and then we're gonna ask Ms. Stone for the roll call. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mayor James,
Here.
Vice Mayor Amber,
Here.
Commissioner Render,
Here.
Commissioner White,
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for the agenda, please?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that the agenda be approved as printed. We only have one discussion item. Transportation, parks, and general government.
Hello.
All right.
So at the regular commission meeting, the ordinance will be brought before you for second reading, the impact fee ordinance. This is the second workshop that is required prior to adoption. I think I've been over the presentation several times with you already, so I wasn't going to reiterate it unless someone wants me to. We can pull it up. But in short order, I have put the sheet in front of you. The impact fees that are being proposed are transportation, parks, and general government, which consists of fire, police, and facilities. So that impact fee could be used on any of those. Impact fees, as we've stated before, you can spend them on costs associated with new development. Oftentimes, it's off-site improvements that are required for the development. And so the total amount for a single-family detached home, if the impact fees are approved, would be $4,989. Multifamily, $3,130. Retail commercial development, $4,502 per 1,000 square feet. Office, $3,242 per 1,000 square feet. Industrial, $1,448 per 1,000 square feet. Warehouse, $549 per 1,000 square feet. And public institutional impact fees would be $1,498 per 1,000 square feet for the combined recommendation. Just to let you know, again, that these, we had a study performed by Duncan and Associates, who they do a lot of cities' impact fee studies. And so they accumulated a lot of data, and we feel like these fees are defensible should they be challenged. Staff is recommending that you approve these amounts and not a lower amount, because if you want to decrease impact fees, then you can always decrease them however much you want. But if you want to increase them, you can only increase them certain percentages over a period of time. And right now, since our water impact fees are so low, our combined impact fees will still be low within the county compared to other cities, even adopting these at their highest rate right now. We can always decrease them later after we do the water and sewer impact fees, after those come before y'all, if y'all desire.
Comments, anyone? No one from the audience? All right, that takes care of that issue. Do you need anything from us?
I know, I just need y'all, you don't need to really take any action or anything. I don't think you can in a workshop meeting, just, this was the required second meeting that we had, so we follow all state regulations. And if there's no questions, I have nothing else to add.
I think it's a good idea that we're getting this done, because we definitely need it the way I feel with it. And since it only pertains to new development, I think that's good.
Can you confirm for me, Ashley, also that the money collected has to be spent within that fiscal year? Is that correct?
No, it
No.
doesn't. It has to
So
be
this
spent on, there are a certain number of years, I need to double check what it is, but it's a pretty lengthy period of
Okay,
time.
okay.
It has to be spent on something that like usually impacts development. So, like I'll just use Bridlewood as the example. If you're gonna do roads, it might be, an expansion that's needed for Bridlewood. But however, like on water and sewer, you could actually use it on the system as a whole because their increased capacity is going to affect the system as a whole. So they're very specific in state statute how you can do it. But you know, just to let you know, the cost of the impact fees, you know, isn't going to completely cover, just as an example, the transportation upgrades that are needed, but the remaining, the developer would have to cover themselves.
So this is not, this transportation impact fee does not give us funds available to address current infrastructure needs?
No,
No.
That's unfortunate.
it's all related to increased development.
Wow.
But sometimes, like, for instance, on parks, for instance, you know, we'll be able to do some park improvements based on increased development, but during the process, existing things kind of get upgraded sometimes too. So it has a positive impact on existing infrastructure in many projects, not all, but sometimes they do. For instance, if you're gonna dig up a road, you can improve a water line at that point, and you don't have to use the funds from water to dig up the road and do the water line, if that makes sense. So you can kind of, there's some economies of scale type of things that end up beneficial.
Can we use transportation funds for sidewalks and lighting where there are existing roads, but maybe the road isn't well lit or there's no sidewalk, so it's a danger for pedestrians?
I need to double check on that. I mean, usually the road sidewalks are a part of the system. So my answer, I would think, would be yes, but I would not like to bring a project forward without double checking.
But you could use it for roads for ingress and egress from the development, right? So if it was
Oh.
coming off of 441, using Bridlewood, to get back
Yeah.
to it, you could do all the roads going back toward Bridlewood since it would be an impact.
Right. I mean, I would think also that lighting is part of that too.
Right.
I wouldn't understand why it wouldn't be, but again, I like to, because all of that stuff is part of the project, as part of the system, and that's the time when you do it. So in the past, when I've done them in other cities, we have made sidewalks part of the project and lighting. But I like to always check Florida state statute on things.
All right. Okay, then we need a motion.
Move to adjourn?
Okay. Meeting adjourned. At this time on November 29th, 6:30 PM, I'd like to call this city commission meeting to order. Shall we have roll call, please?
Mayor James,
Here.
Vice Mayor Ambrose,
Here.
Commissioner Grunder,
Here.
Commissioner White,
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Okay, shall we stand for an invocation, and then we will follow that with our pledge. Dear Lord, we thank you for allowing us to assemble here tonight. We assemble here to take care of the business of the city of High Springs. We thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed upon us through our Thanksgiving season. We thank you for the blessings that you will continue to bestow upon us in the future. And we ask that you continue to lead us, to guide us, and to show us the things that we need to do that will best benefit our city. These things we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, shall we have agenda approval?
Make a motion that we approve the agenda?
Second.
Okay, it has been properly moved and seconded that the agenda be approved as printed. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Agenda carries. Consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda, the minutes of the 3 meetings, or 2 meetings.
Second.
Okay, it has been properly moved and seconded that the consent agenda be approved as printed. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. We have no special presentations for tonight, so we will move on into unfinished business with item number 1, ordinance 2022-13.
Madam Mayor, I'll read this by title only. This is an ordinance of the City Commission for the City of High Springs, Florida, amending Article 7, Design Standards and Improvement Requirements of the Land Development Code to add Part 7.12.00, murals on industrial, public, and private property regarding murals on industrial, public, or private property, repealing all inconsistent ordinances or parts thereof, providing for the enforcement and providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is pass ordinance number 2022-13 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner comments? Go right ahead.
So at the last meeting, the plan board heard, they went back over the mural ordinance because y'all kicked it back to them. And they came up with several recommendations of things that they would like to see incorporated into the ordinance. And I'll let the city attorney, I'll go over those with you, and then I'll let the city attorney weigh in on his recommendations based on what they have requested. So number 1, they wanted that only 1 application per month be considered. Staff does have some questions about this, that if y'all consider putting this in there seriously, we would need to know if action isn't taken, then can we, continue doing a new application the next month and let 2 coincide. The other thing they wanted was, in the event an applicant has multiple murals to submit, they are saying that all the murals may come through as 1 application. In the discussion, they said if 1 mural is turned down, then they'd like all the murals to be turned down and have to start all over. So was what they requested. The third thing that they are requesting be put in there is that each application be accompanied by a digital rendering of the proposed mural drawn to scale. The fourth thing they said is that each application must be accompanied by a $250 application fee and $500 retainer fee, which the retainer fee would be refundable. The next one was that the applicant has 90 days from issuance of permit to complete the mural. If the mural is not completed in 90 days, the permit expires and the applicant must reapply for another permit. So just some expansion on this. So, you know, in the current ordinance, it's 12 months to get started, and they can have an extension for another 12 months. For building, because to me, I was thinking of how this would work with building. A building permit, they have 180 days to get started. As long as they continue to work on the building permit remains active. If they stop work for 180 days, then they do need to come back and pay another fee. So staff would want to know, we are concerned that if they started a mural and it wasn't complete in 90 days, we don't really want half-finished murals around town. So we would like for y'all to consider how to handle that. If you decide to put this in there, if they could just come pay a fee to keep doing work, or extend the number of days, or we don't want half murals painted around town. And then no murals may be within 150 feet of a residence measured from the closest edge of the mural to the property line. That was the other thing that they requested be put in there. And I'll let the city attorney discuss of these what he would recommend and what not.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to do so. The manager has related the items that were recommended from the plan board. As per their last meeting, these are the recommendations that they made. I would, I think, be inconsistent if I said that only one mural per month can be approved. I think my advice to this commission has been consistent and was at the plan board level as well, that there has to be a rational basis for the regulation, and limiting the mural to one mural per month seems to be an effort to limit the ability to have mural approval. And there's specific case law out there that if you have regulations that are not in keeping with constitutional standards, and that it is an effort to create prior restraint of the permit process, that can be construed as unconstitutional. So I would say number one is problematic. I've given that opinion repeatedly over the last several months that we've been considering the mural ordinance, and I would not recommend that number one be submitted in this proposed ordinance. The second item is that the applicant has 90 days from issuance of the permit to complete the mural. If they exceed the 90 days, their permit expires and they must apply for another permit. I think for precisely the reasons that your manager just stated, that could be problematic. 180 days to start work on a building permit seems to be a reasonable time, reasonable restrictions as to time, scope, place, manner, that kind of thing. I think that seems to be an area that you must commence the work in 180 days and actively complete within that after you commence, just like a building permit. That seems like a reasonable compromise with respect to number two, and I think it would pass constitutional muster. You can leave it the year if that's what the commission so chooses. If you want to amend that, then I think that is also permissible. But the 90 days may be problematic from a practical standpoint as to having half-painted murals in the town, perhaps. No murals within 150 feet of a residence, measured from the closest edge of the mural to the lot line. That I have drafted language in the existing ordinance, and I believe our language is more suited. It's very exact. It tells you exactly what the minimum setback is. Murals shall not be placed. Our language is contained in section 7.12.04, subparagraph 2, and then look at the subparagraph D. And this is language that has been crafted in a way that staff will know specifically how to measure, what to do, and how to make the measurement. And murals shall not be placed on any building facade that is within 50 feet of a residential structure measured from the closest exterior edge of the view of the surface of the mural to the closest parallel residential wall. I think your plan board thought the 50 feet was a little too short of what they thought was reasonable. They suggested 150 feet. I think you can go with 150 feet. You could go with 100 feet. You could go with the 50 feet as drafted. But I would keep our language in paragraph D as the language, because then it's very specific as to what is permitted and how to allow for it. Number 4, the applicant must provide a digital rendering. Our language as to the mural application process must be complete, and it must have a number of items. And again, I think our language encompasses the idea of a digital rendering. So let me read that to you, Madam Mayor. 7.12.03, subparagraph 2D, as in dog, is plans and specifications for the proposed mural, including a concept picture. So the applicant must provide you with what it is that they intend to paint on the side of the wall, graphic, and other description. So I think that term encompasses a digital rendering. The application should also include clear and legible drawings with a description showing the location of the mural. Drawings should show the dimensions and materials. Color photos of the building must accompany the mural sketch showing the wall to be painted in relation to adjacent streets and buildings. I think to require a digital rendering, if the artist has to make some changes to the item, I think it could throw us into a scenario where, well, the exact digital rendering was not painted for whatever reason on that surface, and then do we have code enforcement issues? I think language that a digital rendering may be requested as a part of the application, I think that language would be permissible. And but I think also it encompasses with specificity in the application process as to the existing language that's already in there. There has to be a complete application, and it must contain the concept picture, graphic, or other descriptions. So the language I think that we have is sufficient to encompass the condition that the Planning and Zoning Board suggested, which is their number 4. Number 5, if it is an event with multiple murals being proposed, they must submit all information as one submittal. I think when you're crafting a ordinance such as this, you have to be internally consistent. Number 1 and number 5 are inconsistent. And so I think care has to be given with these recommendations. The Planning and Zoning Board, I think you have an excellent Planning and Zoning Board. The membership is very considered, and they really try to do the right thing with respect to the recommendation. They work very hard. They spend a lot of time on this issue. There's no question about that. But it's number 5 and number 1 are a bit of an example. If you're doing something on the fly and it becomes internally inconsistent, then it can create problems with the application that Ashley has to use in the implementation of the mural ordinance. So, and if it's an event with multiple murals being proposed, it must be submitted, all information as one submittal. And for whatever reason, if one of the murals is not acceptable, the application is not complete, to then say that whatever murals are being applied for fall altogether. Number 5, I think, is problematic not only in the draftsmanship, but problematic in the application as well. So I would not recommend that we implement number 5. Number 6 is the application fee is $250, retainer fee of $500. Both are per mural. I think you have the ability to set the mural application fee. That's already contained in the ordinance. Mural permit fee means the permit application fee paid with a mural permit. Commission shall establish a mural permit fee by resolution as amended from time to time. So they're suggesting a $250 fee. I think based upon the discussion with your manager's office and the Planning and Zoning Board, that is a number that they felt was reasonable. I think one of the issues was, is there a retainer fee, because legal may be involved in this as well. And based upon our retainer fee contract, we don't go outside of the normal retainer unless we have a project that's going to be over 10 hours. So I think legal, my anticipation is that legal will not be involved to a great extent in the application for murals. I think the application fee of $250 is reasonable. The retainer fee, if it's because of legal, which was one of the items, I don't think that is reasonable, because I don't think legal is going to be heavily involved in this process, meaning that we're not going to be looking at the content of the mural in any great sense, because these have to be applied in a content neutral basis. So there's really not a lot of work for legal to do, in my estimation. And further, the way the ordinance is drafted, if I'm wrong about that, and it turns out that we are spending a great deal of time in review of mural ordinances, which I don't believe will be the way that this proceeds in application, then we can change the resolution and increase that fee as necessary. But I think the $250 fee will bring back a resolution to the commission if the manager approves that with a resolution that says the application fee shall be $250. I would prefer to set the fee by resolution than in the ordinance itself, because it's a lot easier for you to pass a resolution. Commissioner Grunder, you're new at this, and a resolution can be passed at one meeting. A ordinance takes at least 2 readings, and it takes advertisements, so there's a time lag in the passage of a resolution. So if we find ourselves in a situation where we need to change the application fee process, my preference or my suggestion and recommendation would be that you do it by the resolution process. So those are my comments with respect to your plan board recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, do we have comments on the board? No? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended that plan board meeting on Tuesday, and I echo what Mr. Walker said. The gentleman up there took so much care, and they discussed it for 2 hours. And they put a lot of heart and soul into it, and I'm so grateful for what they did. I have some general comments about the ordinance that I looked through here that I'd like to discuss if possible. On page 1 of the ordinance, again, I've mentioned this before, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th whereas paragraph. I'm curious about this language and where it came from, because this paragraph says, whereas the purpose of this mural program is to create cultural identity, preserve history, promote economic development, focus revitalization efforts, address blight, promote diversity, encourage and foster community engagement, develop an appreciation of art, and contribute to long-term community planning. At no time in this process has this ever been considered a mural program. We are crafting an ordinance, and an ordinance is a law or a decree by a municipality, and it's intended to give guidelines and set regulations that are clear to people who are submitting the permit application. We are not, as a municipality, rolling out a mural program. We are trying to give a path by which a private business owner can have a mural installed. It's not a mural program, it's an ordinance. And I would ask that that paragraph be stricken. And again, the 2 paragraphs down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, paragraph 6 on the same page, whereas the city finds that it possesses the unique aesthetic of a diverse creative class and wishes to increase its potential by increasing the quantity and quality of artworks on display, catalyze high-quality arts programming, provide support for arts initiatives and artists, and to increase arts and culture tourism. Again, this is a mural ordinance. This is not a mural program. I think we have so much artistic talent in our community already that organically that stuff is going to happen on its own. But that verbiage, I contend, does not belong in an ordinance that's trying to set forth guidelines and recommendations to make sure that it's clear what we want. On page 2, section 712.01, number 2, it says permit and encourage murals that are, and then A, B, C, D, E. We're not permitting and encouraging them, we're permitting them. Again, that goes back to the mural program that somehow has found its way into this document. And Mr. Walker, maybe you can provide me with some backup in terms of where that came from, because it's been there the whole time, and I just didn't notice. So it's not something that snuck in there at the end. It was in the version that Andrea first supplied us with. And in terms of the retainer, it's something that I didn't even think about, but the plan board was very, very considerate in how they came up with that, and the understanding that a retainer is a pass-through. You know, if the permit application is complete and there are no issues, then there's not going to be a need for them to have any kind of legal issue, and the retainer simply goes back to the applicant. And I think having that retainer fee there is wise for the city. I think the permit amount of $250, as Ashley stated at the plan board meeting, it wouldn't cover our costs. It certainly hasn't covered the amount of time the city has spent on this ordinance. But if that's the plan board's recommendation and Ashley feels comfortable with that, I will certainly go with whatever Ashley recommends. In terms of digital rendering, I think that if you've got an artist who's to the point where they know what they're going to put up on that wall, and with software such that it is, I think a digital rendering would maybe be one of the easier parts. And I think a digital rendering overlaying the actual location sized to scale would go a long way, because a picture is certainly worth 1,000 words. And if you're seeing what they want to put up there, where they want to put it up there to scale, I think that would actually make the review process a little bit easier, in my opinion. So then on page 4 of 8, J, proof of payment and the mural permit fee, I think we should add there and retainer fee, just to be complete. And I agree with you, Mr. Walker, in terms of number 1 and number 5 being inconsistent. 1 being only 1 mural permit can be approved per month, and 5 giving the allowance for there to be a bulk submittal. I agree. And I think 5 should not be part of the mural permit, because I think that would make things a little bit too cumbersome. And I think one mural per month, if we were very clear with how we defined what a month was, which, if it comes to a plan board, which meeting of the month it goes to, how long it goes before it goes to the commission, I think being very detailed in that regard is appropriate. When we're crafting an ordinance, the goals and objectives are to craft the ordinance such that it supports the needs of the population of the city. It's not to be tailored to a certain group. It's for the needs of the city. And I think With the plan board seeing that the one mural permit per month could be approved, I think they're seeing that as well. And as I mentioned at the plan board meeting, I have found an active mural ordinance in the state of Florida that limits the number of mural permit applications they will process at a time. Now, they allow for more than one per month, but they're also a city that's 70 times bigger than we are, and they have more staff that can help with that kind of stuff. I think our staff is stretched to beyond already at this point. So we've already found a constitutional precursor with a mural ordinance that's already in place that limits the number. We would be following suit with fewer, obviously. The 90 days for installation, I think, is reasonable, because if you've gotten to the point where you know what art you're going to put on the wall, basically at that point you're going to be fighting the Florida weather more than anything else, probably. So if your permit application is complete, I don't think 90 days is too much of a time constraint. That's my opinion. On page 7 of 8, section 7, 12, 11, paragraph number 1, I just need some clarification on this, if you could, please. Murals installed in accordance with this section shall remain on site in the approved location and cannot be altered, replaced, or removed except as provided in this section, or when deemed to be unsafe by the city building official, or when the city determines replacement is necessary due to damage from natural disasters. There's no provision in there where if the property is sold and there's a new property owner, if that new property owner would like to take the mural down, I think that should be allowed. And I don't know if it's appropriate to put that clarification here or not. But certainly if somebody else bought the property, they should be able to do as they wish with the property. So that's my general comments about this, and I'll yield at this point because I know I threw a lot of questions out to you, Mr. Walker.
I have a question. I must admit I didn't see the plan board meeting or attend it, but why are they only wanting one mural a month? And I would ask the city manager, is staff capable of dealing with more than one a month?
Staff is capable of dealing with more than one a month. It's no different than zoning cases or plats that come forward. We have to deal with what comes in. So I think the intent was that they just wanted enough time to be able to consider each one, is what they thought. There's not a whole lot of, since it has to be content neutral, and since the murals, there's a lot that we can't regulate because of free speech, according to the city attorney. So it's not like, a site plan or construction plans that come in. There's not as much for staff to be, a lot of it's subjective, and we can't be subjective. So there's not as much for us really to look at, quite honestly. There's not as much that we can have a say in. So like we're looking at it, but it's not like we have this long checklist like we have for planning items that we have to go through ordinances and read and check everything off. So it's not going to take too much time for us. So, but if there's things to be considered that I'm not aware of, then, or that someone can point to that should be in the city regulations for staff to be looking at, we certainly will be, but we can't, it's very subjective, and we can't make decisions based on things that are subjective, whether we like it or not. I mean, it's basically going to be on colors, and I don't know what else we're really looking at that we can control. We're watching the size, where its placement is. I mean, there's some things in there, but it's not a really long list.
I think your manager has summarized the position of staff very well. The analogy that I've used in the past is that there's a provision in Florida statutes. If somebody comes in with a request for a building permit, and a building permit is sometimes very complex. You have to look at your electrical, your plumbing, your structural, all the things that you need to look at in the context of construction that's going to go out that meets the public health, safety, and welfare of our citizenry. And that has to be approved in a 30-day timeframe per statute. That's a much more complex procedure than an application for artwork. As your manager said, there's not a lot that we can do with regulating artwork. The case law in this area is that the artwork is considered free speech. It's in the First Amendment criteria. So there's not a lot we can do. Now, to Commissioner White's point that she's made in several of the meetings, if you can regulate as to the height of the original ordinance that we had before the commission was a 30-foot limitation. And her recommendation was to go to 20 feet. I think that's something that you can do legally. I think there are some restrictions that you can do. Another instance, as your manager just said, is that in a historic district, you have a little bit more leeway as to what can be approved. You can look at the colors of the particular mural, and does it match the colors in your historic district? You can say it can't be put on the old sand brick, because when you have to take that down or you have to maintain it, it may damage the sand brick. And so it has to be mounted on a board or in some way managed and painted so that it doesn't harm a historic building. To Commissioner White's points that she made, the whereas clauses, I think, I don't know specifically what ordinance Andrea used to come up with those whereas clauses, but as an umbrella comment, I would say first that this ordinance gives you some ability to have or maintain some control over height restrictions in the historic district as to colors and what goes up on these. And it gives you some notice of what's going to be happening. Whereas if you don't have an ordinance at all, you lose the ability to have any meaningful review as to what's going on. And so as an umbrella statement, this is an effective program. It does look at the artwork, and it does acknowledge that some people like murals. This is an issue that's divided our community. There's no other way to say it. Rightly or wrongly, it has done that. Maybe that will lessen as time goes on. I don't know. That's something that remains to be seen. But for whatever reason, this has been a kind of a hot button issue for a number of months now for the city. Having an ordinance, some people look at it as a program. It promotes the art. Other people say, no, it doesn't. We don't want any murals, period. But that's what is going on here. There is some regulation as a result of this ordinance and this program. My recommendation would be not to change the fourth whereas clause and not to change the sixth whereas clause. The point that Commissioner White's made as to what if I'm a new property owner? The property owner, this is a property rights issue. If I'm a property owner and I buy a building and it has a mural on there, I think the property owner has the ability to paint over it or to sandblast it off of there. That's a property rights issue, and I don't think the city has the ability to regulate that. Now, if the mural becomes in disrepair or it becomes problematic because of the fact that it hasn't been maintained, that does become a city issue, and we can implement our codes enforcement process if that be the case. And further, if after notice that the property owner just won't maintain it further, I think we can then take action to either fine through your code enforcement board. Hopefully we'd never get to that kind of a scenario, but you can look at restoring the building if necessary. But other than that, I think the existing language in the ordinance meets, in my view, constitutional muster, and it's been vetted on numerous occasions in this setting in front of our city commission. It's gone to Planning and Zoning Board twice. You have the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Board. You have my recommendations based upon on what happened at P and Z. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else?
I've got one other thing, if I may, Madam Mayor. Since Commissioner Grunder is new, I know you're kind of drinking from the fire hose with all this stuff. I thought it would be appropriate to give him a little bit of background. And I have a two-slide PowerPoint that, if Kevin could put it up, I would appreciate it. Just in terms of the timeline and kind of why we are where we are. I'll keep one and I'll hand them down if you guys want them. You can look at the, so all I'm speaking to here is things that I know. There's a lot that I don't know, so you have to understand there's a lot of holes here. And, you know, Vice Mayor Ambrose may be able to fill in some blanks, or Mr. Walker, I don't know. But the whole reason we got here was because back in 2019, there was a 501c3 that was created, and they signed a contract in that same year with a group of mural artists to bring them to High Springs. 3 years later, they were delayed a little bit because of COVID, like everybody. 3 years later, that group came and presented here to the commission for a special use permit application for a week-long event. After that meeting, and there were a lot of people here, we tabled the discussion and had a workshop that everybody else up here remembers, I'm sure. We had it at the Civic Center in February of this year, and it was standing room only. When you ask about the one permit mural application at a time, I would submit to you that based on the input that I've received from people in the town, that's what they want. And if we're doing our civic duty up here as elected officials within a constitutional republic, we are representing the 6,500 people who live here. It doesn't matter what we want personally up here. If it were up to me personally, I would say none in the historic district at all, but it's not my say. So the Heart of High Springs got their permit application approved, and they had a week-long event. There was an event here in Chambers, 3 hours on a Saturday. I sat here for all 3 hours because all I had heard to date up to then was, please, can we figure something out here? Please don't let this happen. So I wanted to make sure I exposed myself to people who were interested in it. And attendance here, there were probably 15, maybe 20 people that came on that Saturday. And then they had 2-hour-long fireside chats over in the library, and I attended both of those. Those were hosted by Vice Mayor Ambrose. And between those two events, there were 3 people. So, you know, the evidence that I was able to gather from that was that there wasn't a lot of interest, and most of what I had heard was against having this kind of installation done. So then in terms of the actual ordinance process, it's been rather cumbersome for sure. In June, I do all my communicating with Mr. Walker and the law firm by email, just so that I can remember what I said. And in June of this year, I sent an email to Mr. Walker requesting special verbiage be added to the ordinance for consideration, and that verbiage specifically was to process one permit mural application at a time. August 8th, when I got the packet, the verbiage wasn't in there. So I sent Mr. Walker an email, and he advised that it was not his recommendation. He has been very consistent in terms of that recommendation. Then at the August 11th commission meeting, I've been over this before too. In that meeting, we came back to discussions on the mural ordinance, and this body passed in a 5-0 vote to include the language I had recommended, be considered, sent back to the plan board. Mr. Walker confirmed in the meeting that he understood and he would add it. It was not added. Mr. Walker maintains, would not pass constitutional muster, he doesn't recommend it, even though the commission had already voted 5-0 to add it in for consideration. So that's why this particular issue is kind of a sticky one. And then in the October 13th meeting, the commission voted again, and it failed the second time. And then the plan board meeting last Tuesday. I attended that meeting, and I spoke at that meeting. I participated with them. I try to attend as many of their meetings as I can. And they put in a lot of thought and a lot of effort into this. And I think that if we are remembering that we're here to do the will of the people, it's not that people in town don't want murals. And we are not telling anybody, if we restrict the pace, like another city in Florida does, that we don't want them. We don't support their free speech. We don't like murals. We don't like art. We're just saying the people of this community are asking us to put some time restrictions in there so that they can kind of slow roll it and get used to it. I appreciate you letting me present that, Kevin. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Well, based on that, it's pretty clear that the motivations behind this are targeted at one particular group trying to operate as a legal corporation and a nonprofit in the city of High Springs. So I think that makes anything that we might move forward with a little more tenuous in what might happen. But since you brought up the heart of High Springs, instead of focusing on a mural ordinance that would have broad application to the entire community, we could also point out that that group has gone from 15 murals to 10 murals. They've agreed not to paint on any unpainted historic brick walls. The walls they've publicized are very indiscriminate and out of the way on the side of extreme exposure, the Duke Energy building. Those aren't pretty walls right now. They've done things to try and work with the community to meet those needs. And in fact, business owners and property owners have come forward and said, yeah, I want my wall painted. And people have come forward with significant contributions to fund this so that city funds weren't going to be used. So now I'm hearing from the attorney, and I continue to hear from the attorney, that we need a rational basis for our rules, that we have to avoid coming across as prior restraint, and the presentation by Commissioner Whites really seems to show that that is what is being attempted, including the timelines. And really, to me, that would be a misuse of government in any situation, to use the power of government to stop a legal organization from engaging in legal activities with the consent of property owners using private funds. So having said all that, there is no way that I'm going to vote for an ordinance that the attorney, any kind of ordinance, is saying probably wouldn't pass constitutional muster, and because we've just created a liability situation for the city. So, you know, having said that, I don't know whether there are public comments or other commissioner comments, but I'm not going to encourage any changes to the ordinance. I mean, I would have gone for, 100 feet instead of 50 feet as a setback, or things that could be used and work. But, I'm not going to support the misuse of the power of government for people who maybe there are people who don't want this. I get it. They don't own the buildings. What's their stake in the game? And they're not providing the funds. So, people talk about private property rights and government should not be regulating. Well, this would be exactly the opposite. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Walker, when did your firm bring back the original ordinance? How long have we been dealing with this?
I believe we started in June. I can tell you a little more definitively. January 26, 2022 was our first entry, it looks like. So it's been something that has been worked on for almost a year now.
Thank you.
Then bringing something, there were preliminary discussions publicly as well about the event, but that kind of proliferated into some discussions on an ordinance.
It is always my recommendation, Madam Mayor, whenever you're passing a regulation, that it not be directed to one particular entity or one particular individual or that sort of thing. For example, we have murals that are existing in the city now that I don't know if they're Heart of High Springs, I have no idea. But if you focus on one 501c3 entity, that is not how you pass ordinances. You pass it for the city as a whole and not as to one organization or one group. And your laws not only have to be citywide, but they have to be applied equally. So you can't apply it indiscriminately as to one applicant different than you apply that same law to a different applicant. The point that was just made about litigation is there are groups in this country that are out there that challenge ordinances. And a challenge like this would go to federal court, and there are very few lawyers that are even licensed to go to federal court. I am. My partner, Allison Folds, who's in the audience, is licensed at the Northern District. I'm licensed in the Middle District. I've argued cases in front of the 11th Circuit up in Atlanta. We're licensed to practice in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. But a challenge like this would go to federal court more than likely. And my experience is between state court litigation and federal court litigation, because we've actually conducted cases in federal litigation, is that the expense is inordinately greater in federal court than it is in state court. And by the time you defended something, hopefully you have done something that is defensible and can withstand challenge. But what I would tell you also is if you set up something in a way that is subject to challenge, and it does get challenged, and you spend a great deal of attorney's fees don't build parks, they don't build streets and roads, they don't conduct the general government of the city, which is police, fire, all those kind of things. So the thing that my focus is to not create a situation that burdens your manager with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in litigation when I don't believe that it is defensible. That's the last thing that the city of High Springs needs. So that's why we spent a great deal of time working on this mural ordinance over the last year.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do we have any more comments up here? Okay.
So basically, we need an ordinance that's going to meet constitutional law. And then you saying that some part of this ordinance, it do give you some type of regulation what you can and cannot do. I know you got the freedom of speech, but there's some colors and different things you can regulate that. You just can't put anything on the wall as it's written now.
I would say on the colors, it's more in the historical district than the entire city.
Okay.
And there's still a lot of leeway there because the historic district doesn't, there's leeway for colors in all the historic district because it's not specific the way it's written currently.
Okay.
But we're going to work on the LDC this year.
Okay. But the ordinance do kind of give us some, I hate to say control, but some type of control of what we can and cannot do. And it must, sitting up here, if we don't meet constitutional law, we'd be in trouble. And I don't think we need to go down that path of going through lawsuits. So, and then without an ordinance, they can do whatever. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I have a question. So, Mr. Walker, since there is an existing mural ordinance, it does regulate how many are processed at a time. Does that not give any constitutional backing for us to do the same?
No, and the reason is, I don't know that ordinance has ever been challenged on that basis. What is the rational basis that regulation, just because another city, and in the Planning and Zoning Board, it was said that in Alachua, they don't allow mural, they chased them out of town, or there was discussion about that. I'm not going to criticize their city attorney, that's not my position to do that, but it would not be my recommendation in the city of High Springs to take a position like that, or that just because another city has passed a regulation that is potentially problematic, that I think that we should adopt that same problematic regulation that's never been challenged constitutionally. I don't think that that is, it would never be my advice to do that. And like I said, I'm coming to you with 40 years of experience of litigating cases in federal court. So it's not without some experiential background that I'm giving you my advice, in addition to studying the constitutional provisions as well as other ordinances that are out there. But if there is just that provision that another city has passed, that does not mean that it is constitutional at all.
At this point, what is your recommendation? And then I'll go to the audience.
Are you asking for a motion?
I think that's what we need at this point.
I'll put a motion on the table to accept the mural ordinance as given to us by the attorney.
Hear the motion. So these 5 points are not in the original, this ordinance use.
No, sir, we did not add it.
Second. Just for discussion.
Okay, it has been properly moved and second that ordinance 2022-13 be approved as written. Roll call.
We need discussion from the public, Madam Mayor.
Okay, first.
I got a few more questions.
Okay. Anybody have comments from the audience?
Madam Mayor, distinguished council, my name is Sean Coles. I'm a homeowner here in High Springs as well as a small business owner. I'm here tonight to express my concern about the proposed mural ordinance. Public art adds enormous value to a community's cultural, aesthetic, and economic vitality. It is now a well-accepted principle of urban design that public art contributes to a community's identity, fosters community pride, and a sense of belonging, and it enhances residents as well as the residents and tourists' quality of life. I think we need to encourage citizens and organizations that are willing to participate in the promotion of our city through art. I believe that this proposed ordinance will only discourage such entities and ultimately result in a disservice to our community. Thank you for the time this evening, Madam Mayor. I genuinely appreciate you and the Commissioner's service to this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? No?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jessica Caldas. I am a local resident of High Springs. I also run Good News Arts, a local arts nonprofit arts and education center here in the community. I'm also here to express some concerns about this ordinance. I really appreciate the city attorney's comments, which elucidate why this ordinance is so problematic. The facts that it basically is something that you all are passing that, or possibly going to pass, which opens you up to intense scrutiny from anybody who cares at all about the right to free speech, especially of an artistic nature. I believe that Mr. Walker has mentioned the idea of prior restraint to you all previously. And I just, as an artist, as a person who feels very strongly about the need and freedom of expression to not be detained prior to that expression, I'm urging you all to challenge this ordinance. I heard Mr. Williams say, you know, we have to, or if we don't have an ordinance, they'll do whatever they want. I'm not sure what you are expecting artists to do that is so nefarious. I can guarantee you it's probably not that bad. most artists care pretty deeply about their communities and engaging in positive and fruitful ways with their community. I speak from experience. I wanted to point out that one of the things, concerns about the language as it stands in the ordinance is, that Commissioner White's expressed were about clear guidelines. One of the issues of prior restraint that you'd be facing should someone challenge this ordinance and if it passes would have to do with the lack of clarity, the lack of standards that are clear to anybody who might want to express themselves. I'm sure you feel that whatever is listed in here is clear enough, but the problem is that it's not. Sure, size is one thing, but there's a lot of phrases throughout the body of the ordinance that I think are very, very general, very, very unspecific and not clear. That includes sufficiently durable or properly maintained. Who is going to decide what that means? Will you all decide what that means? What standards do you have to define those terms? How about appropriate places or unsafe features? What does that mean? Who will define that? How will you defend yourselves against somebody choosing to challenge this ordinance on those grounds of clarity, of specificity? You mentioned the historical district guidelines in the ordinance. I am unaware of specific historical district guidelines. I believe the city manager mentioned that as we sit here now, those guidelines are unspecific. So I just urge you to consider that as you move forward with how you consider this ordinance. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioner, everyone. My name is Dae Kim, known as Baram. I do live in High Spring, Main Street. It's actually that I bought a house in Main Street a few years ago, and I never filed any single complaint that are living in Main Street. They sometimes get very loud at night. So I know that I committed to live on in the city for convenience. So if somebody do route, driving loud, at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I know I live in the city, so I don't complain to the city police department because that I chose to live in the city. So there's few things that we have an issue with the ordinance that you restrict property right, and we have 150 feet restriction from the residents. What defines a residence? I live in Main Street, so therefore I don't complain to city police. 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody drive very loud vehicle here. They play loud music, almost my house upside down sometimes. That's how we don't enforce the sounds ordinance in the city, but we do force business to always shut down the music. We restrict the business, so we don't really truly not following keeping those noise ordinance. Truly, that's what happening in the city. We know that. Everybody drive like a maximum sound of a decibel with a motorcycle or their vehicle, but we don't regulate that. Maybe we do regulate, but people don't follow. But when it comes to many, many other issues, we want to restrict the 150 feet from the residence. I have a friend of mine owns a property right here, downtown, but commercial property, but somebody living there. So if a mural goes right there, is that restricting that? People are choosing to live in the main street. That means that their cities are intent to bring the commerce. Do you agree? City is a center of the business and commerce. That's what city is for. If I do live in the city, I'm not going to complain the city because I live in the city. I chose to live in the city for convenience. Therefore, I'm not going to complain when loud noises are here at the city downtown. So the people should be knowing this for the business. And also sure I live here too. So I run the business, I live in the downtown also. But still city has to function as a downtown to serve people, to attract people, provide a safe space. If you don't have a good strong business in the city or artists or tourists coming to city, we're gonna be dealing with a high crime, depressions. And as we know that next year we're gonna go into recessions. And something like this, I could bring the artists from all over the country and it will bring some more economic prosperity to town. Sure, that will help benefit people. Right now, city of High Spring was going to depression for many, many decades that I know. I never lived there long enough, but I heard from many of my old friends, yes, we went to depression because people are avoiding the city of High Spring because we didn't have anything to offer. So now the city is becoming more attractive. So more people, younger people are joining to the even city government. They're more involved. So we should really also support the freedom of speech. It's like more like we're restricting the, what the woman should dress up back in the day. We're not going to go back to what we can say about ourselves rather than what you dress. So hopefully that we can actually have some good, meaningful resolution also. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I get one clarification? It's 50 feet in this, correct? Not 150? Okay.
Another question. And so this don't restrict them from expressing their
So
thoughts or?
if a resident is within 50 feet, then they cannot put a mural across from a home that's within 50 feet. So there is some restriction there.
My question was, what's the definition of a home? Because some people live in commercial properties that are home, but they chose to live. Their friend of mine owns a property right here, but they rented out to somebody as a business, but instead of running the business, they're living now. It became basically a homestead. So that means it's a business or a residence. That something is not well defined.
I would agree. I think that we had that discussion in Plan Board, and I think that, and I'm not sure exactly how it's worded, but we were going to interpret it based on use. If someone is living there, then it's a home, because homes are allowed in a variety of zoning categories. So you can't just go off the zoning category that it's allowed. It has to go off of what the use is at that time.
What's the intention of the 50-foot distance? Is it just and I don't mean to
Yeah.
negate it or make it small, but is that just a number we kind of came up with, or is that in line with what other places are doing, or what's the kind of the intention and the spirit behind it?
I believe it was modeled after another city's ordinance, and the idea is that if there is a residence that is in close proximity to where the mural is being painted, that would be prohibited. So it would have to be something that is, there's a distance between the mural and a residential property, such that the mural ordinance is directed to commercial, industrial areas or areas of commerce. So the idea is to have a restriction there in residential areas.
Okay, yeah, I'll say hearing the concerns, I would like to amend the motion I made, and we can do that after everybody else talks, but I would agree with amending it and taking away the 50-foot. I mean, it's 20 feet tall. Doesn't matter if you live 49 feet away from it, you're still gonna see it. And I don't think they're a bad thing, honestly. How many murals do we have at this time in the city? Anybody know? About 12. I mean, I saw and I appreciate the Plan Board working on this. It's probably something they never thought they were gonna have to do, and I can only imagine that it was difficult, and you hear it from everybody, and, everybody's got an opinion on it, and I completely understand that. I am a fan of property owners being able to do with their buildings what they want, and it concerns me that on one hand, we'll pack the house telling people we don't want a landowner to develop their property, but then at the same time, we'll tell a landowner or a property owner what they can't put on the side of their building that's already there. And I have to agree with Commissioner Ambrose that a lot of the walls they're talking about aren't exactly walls I drive by and go, man, that's a good looking wall. So, that's just my 2 cents.
Mayor James, I know I gave up my opportunity, but would it be all right if Janet Evans. I want to say that I am not necessarily against murals being done in our community. I know my brother Jim Gabriel has a mural on the side of his shop, and I think it looks great. So I'm not necessarily saying, you know, I'm anti-murals. What I would like to state is that I think that there should be a proper process and a procedure to be put in place to make those kinds of decisions for a lot of things in the city. And from what I know, it seems like there are a lot of things like that lacking in our community that need to be tightened up to protect our community and keep it with the historic value that we all love. So it's not a matter of do we want murals or not, but a matter of let's put a nice, secure process and procedure in place and go with that.
Okay, now are we amending the motion or what?
I would like to amend it, Madam Mayor, to accept the ordinance. I did the lady who got up and did ask those questions. I completely agree with her on the fact of who is going to be, can we get some information as to who will determine whether it's not being upkept or what the proper upkeep is or how you keep up something like that? I must admit, I'm definitely not an artsy guy.
The determination would be under the structure of the ordinance by codes enforcement. So your codes enforcement officer would say, hey, this mural is now decrepit, it's peeling, or there's something that is problematic with the way it looks because of age, wear and tear, that sort of thing. And so the complaint would go from codes enforcement to the board, and then the board would, so there would be a group that would make a decision as opposed to one individual. And in order for that process to go forward, there has to be due process to the property owner. So if the property owner comes in and says, hey, I'm on hard times now and I need some time to repaint or whatever, they can delay the application for 90 days, or they could allow for the matter to be abated if necessary, or look, you need to get this fixed, otherwise we're going to implement fines. And usually the fine is $250 a day until it's complied with. But the typical process is that doesn't happen overnight. It's months-long process. The property owner is engaged, and I would say in my experience, 90% of the codes enforcement matters are dealt with before they even get to the board or at the board, and there's resolution.
7.12.11 goes through it a lot more specifically, but eventually it would come to the magistrate.
So I guess my amended motion would be to accept the ordinance as it's written minus the 50-foot rule.
So then what would the footage be?
I mean, honestly, Commissioner Williams, I think if it's 20 feet tall, I mean, I don't think making it 150 feet, it's not going to stop your ability to see it. In fact, you'll be able to see it better. So, I mean, I don't think you should have a footage. Honestly, I don't think it's going to change anything. They're kind of arbitrary numbers that seem to just be put in place because they felt they needed a number.
Mr. Mayor, that paragraph then would be deleted. So 7.12, under the amendment, it would be in section 7.12.04 2D, murals shall not be placed on a building facade that is within 50 feet of a residential structure. measured from the closest exterior edge of the view of the surface for the mural, the closest parallel residential wall. That, based upon the amendment, you would strike that paragraph D.
Okay. So that comes out in its entirety.
Madam Mayor, may I just make one comment? I think, Commissioner Grunder, one of the reasons the genesis of that could be, I don't know if this for sure, but one of the requests I had when this first came out was that a mural would not face a residential structure at all. And I think Mr. Walker put in those dimensions to better define that approach. And my contention from that regard was that, you know, if that's a private property owner that bought property with a certain view, and somebody, now I had also offered the idea that if they got the buy-off from the private property owner, if they got their agreement, no problem. But Mr. Walker thought that might be a little bit cumbersome of a process. But, you know, if a mural installation impacts a private resident in a way that impacts them negatively, I don't know if that's fair to the private property owner either. So that may be part of the genesis of where that all came in. And I agree with you, if it's 20 feet tall, you're going to see it a half a mile down the road, which, you know, would go back to my preference that it not face a residential structure at all, but I did not have the support of the commission on that. So that's probably where that came from.
Okay, thank you for that.
So the maker of the motion would need to accept the amendment if that's what you choose.
Well, we've got the motion out there. We didn't get a second, I don't think.
Okay, does the second,
But he
Agree with the
second the original motion, correct?
So, okay, come on, Robert's Rules of Order.
So do I need to
So,
make
so
a,
let me ask you a question. So do we need to vote on the amendment?
That's what I'm asking.
I think we should vote on the amendment,
Right.
and then we vote on the original motion, am I correct?
you're correct. Now, if you accept the amendment to your motion, then you can call it up. Then that is the motion, and you can call it up for vote, if you so choose to do that.
He lost.
You can either second it, and then we can vote on it, because that's now the motion on the floor.
Oh, okay, that's what I was
He
trying to
said
get
it
to.
better than I did.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll second that to amendment, okay.
Okay, so now it has been properly moved and second that ordinance 2022-13 be approved as amended.
And this is first reading, correct?
It is first reading. Yeah, because
Yeah.
because you kicked it back last time. So
Yeah.
it's like a new ordinance, so we'd have to bring it back again.
Okay. All right, so I guess now we're ready.
Ready? Mayor James.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose.
Yes.
Commissioner Grunder.
yes,
Commissioner Whites.
No.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. All right, our next item is item number 2, ordinance 2022-17.
Madam Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended pursuant to an application LDC 22-03 by the City Commission relating to an amendment of the text of the Land Development Code, providing for adding Part 5.11.0.0 entitled Impact Fees, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. I would note that there's a new statute that is 163.31801, subparagraph 4, subparagraph D, that provides that it will not become, the ordinance does not become effective until 90 days after the ordinance is passed.
Mayor?
Yes, all right.
For those of you in the audience, we've had 2 workshops on this, including one at 5:30 today. So, given that this is a good thing that will increase the resources of the city whenever there's a new development in town. I'm going to make a motion, we approve ordinance 2022-17.
I second it.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second that ordinance 2022-17 be approved. Do we have comments here from the guys? No? Yeah, no, nobody here. Okay, anybody in the audience? Okay, very good. All right, we're ready.
Vice Mayor Ambrose.
Yes.
Commissioner Grunder.
Yes.
Commissioner Whites.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Mayor James.
Yes. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 3 is ordinance 2022-22.
Madam Mayor, this is ordinance amending the adopted fiscal year 2022 budget of the City of High Springs, providing an effective date, providing for conflict. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2022-22 as read by title only.
Okay, thank you. Again, we have comments from the commissioners? No? All right. Yep. I'm trying to see if anybody has any comment.
I'll go ahead and make a motion, we go ahead and approve ordinance 2022, reconciling last year's budget.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved in second that ordinance 2022-22 be approved. Do we have any audience comments? Not any. Okay.
Commissioner Grunder.
Yes.
Commissioner Whites.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Mayor James.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, at this point, we are ready for citizens' requests and comments. This is for issues that are not on the agenda, and we ask that you please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. Anyone in the audience? Nobody.
Vice Mayor, and noise ordinance in the city. I know we are working on it, and how to really bring the city to more vibrant, more exciting what city is supposed to do, bring commerce and businesses and safety. So when our city shut down when all the city is actually booming in the evening, and everybody goes to Gainesville or Columbia County to socialize, because where cities are really shutting down at 9:10, where everybody leave the town, when city is supposed to be driving and safe at night, but we don't have a safety or excitement in town because our noise ordinance. At the same time, we mentioned that we don't have even code enforcement to somebody who want to have a modified muffler, they want to express their maximum pressure for somebody suffering. I wake up 3, 4 in the morning and quite regularly because somebody want to drive with whatever their speaker they're running. But we're so hard on the businesses or our freedom of speech or we're free to run the business. But we are so we're restricting our commerce in the business here. So I think we should really have a little more reasonable sounds ordinance that we can allow the business to have a live music at Friday, Saturday night. Another thing is that we discuss about our impacting our business really heavily. The alcohol also. I know cities are moving forward to have entertainment district. I know state of Florida encourage you to have open carry orders in certain manner, but right now I don't see in High Spring that often. I think that's something that we should really consider. If you don't bring the tourism and the economic prosperity, it will be absolutely high crime, and that's what I see in the depression. I came from the city of D.C. When there's a depression, there's a lot of drug addictions. It's a very hard to fight. If there's a prosperity, it's easier to have a job, high-paying job for the people. So I think tourism is absolutely one of the biggest sector here in this community also. A lot of people are working at the hospital and healthcare industry, but I think High Spring particularly, more people come to High Spring to spend money if you do provide services. Right now, there's a business who want to provide actually services, whether restaurant, breweries, and or shop, they want to provide a service, but we were forced to shut down early because our sounds ordinance and alcohol regulation also. That's something that we should absolutely not delay anymore, because we'll be losing a lot of business to other city if you continue to have an old ordinance in the city. So hopefully that we will, I don't know when your schedule is actually about that, because we discussed, I've been patiently waiting for 2 years, more than 2 years, but I have not really heard anything yet. So I just came first time in like a year and a half to see whether cities are moving forward with those issues. Impacting, I know we're gonna have if you go with a mural artist, they're gonna come. It's an insult on the people who are coming from other cities come to bring some arts here. We say everybody have to leave the town to go to Gainesville to socialize, because our city do not allow to have fun at night, because everything's closing down because our ordinance here. So hopefully that we can actually have the better solution to have a better tourism and more economic prosperity. So I think of the business really that bring security and also safety, because when people are employed, have a job, they're less likely they're going to be going into depression and drug addiction. I've seen that before when I was in DC. When you bring the high-paying job to the city, typically addiction go down, and we can really bring a lot of changes, positive changes. So I think the city has a chance to bring more jobs and more safety with the tourism, but we can just stay as the same as we has been for past 30, 40 years. So I think I would love to really ask you if you can consider to move forward to change the sounds ordinance and restricting alcohol on Saturday. Basically, we're shutting down the restaurant at 10 o'clock on Saturday because of our ordinance. Business should be thriving at Saturday night. Here in town, everybody leave or they go to other city. They go to Lake City, other city. Everybody in this area on the weekend. Okay, let's not stay in High Spring. It's not fun. So that's a very big issue for us, because everybody goes to Columbia County or Gainesville. So we're in Alachua County also, but city of High Springs is a little behind whenever it comes to that freedom that we should have. But I don't use it myself. I constantly do campaign for like a sober also, because I don't promote the drug, but people should have a freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? No? Okay, let's move right along. Item number 8, new business. Item 1, discuss, consider, and act on Champa site plan adding an accessory structure.
So Commission, this is a pretty simple site plan.
Yes,
it was
it
blown
is.
up on a larger piece of paper for you. It's just an 8x10 shed located at 23508 Northwest 185th Road. Y'all know where Chompers is. It's behind their existing drive-through diner. And it's supposed to be the same color blue as their building, and they've agreed to plant bushes on the rear along the side facing Northwest 235th Street. So along any sides that are abutting a public street, there will be some shrubs. And the material will be hardy board, vinyl siding, and an aluminum roof.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any commissioner comments?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor, if I could just ask one question. Can you verify for me this is just going to be storage? There's not going to be anybody in the shed?
Right.
Such it would have to be certified to be an occupied dwelling?
Yeah,
or-
it can, there's several stipulations to meet an occupied dwelling, it wouldn't meet it.
Okay, thank you.
And we require 1,000 square feet for an occupied dwelling as well, and anything lower has to be on a residential site.
in terms of installation, if it was going to be an occupied dwelling, it would require much, much different installation.
Oh, yeah, it
too,
would
so-
have, to have a kitchen and bathroom. and,
Well,
you know.
not so much, even if it was just an office area.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's going
Oh,
to have
yes.
a desk there.
Yeah.
And if there's going to be somebody occupying the structure at all, from a safety perspective, it would have to be certified as a Tier 2 structure and.
Oh, yeah,
That's a
yeah,
whole
all
nother-
of that.
Okay.
And also, it's not even going to be air conditioned. So we checked on that
Nobody's
today.
going to want to stay in
So
there in
it's
Florida.
complete, 100% storage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? No? Okay, anybody got any comments from the audience? Okay. And I guess we need to.
The plan?
Second.
All right, it has been properly moved and second that the plan for Chompers additional storage structure be approved. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same response. All right, approved, 5-0. Item number 2, appoint representative to the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council.
Been on there before?
All right,
It's great you're volunteering.
I know, I never make a meeting.
Yeah.
Every now and then.
But the staff recommendation was we potentially appoint Christie.
Oh, okay, that's
to
fine.
participate, because it conflicts with our meetings.
So,
Thursday.
we do need to have someone elected to be on it, but we also have Christie as kind of the adjunct person because the meetings fall on the fourth Thursday of every month.
Yeah.
Okay,
You want a motion?
yep,
I make a motion, we approve Commissioner Williams, or appoint Commissioner Williams to the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council with Christie Adkins as his delegate.
I second.
all right.
It's just with paper on it.
That's what it is. That's what it is. All right. All those in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, Commissioner Williams, you have been appointed,
All righty.
5-0. Item number 3, discuss the breakdown of the attorney's office bill on the Muriel ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I requested this just because I wanted to see this and thought it would be appropriate for everybody to understand. I went through it, and there's a lot of work here. I know they've been working on this since January. But I think it's important that folks realize that this mural ordinance, such that it is tonight, has cost the city of High Springs $18,426, above and beyond the annual retainer of $63,600 that we're paying the city attorney. And that's a lot of money. So I looked through this, and there's a lot of detail here. I see my name here, and I appreciate that. And that's really it. I didn't have anything to say other than, wanting to make sure that the city knew what this mural ordinance had cost them. So, thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments from the commissioners? No? So we really don't want us to do anything, we just discuss the issue?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, let's move right along. Discuss the current city attorney's contract and placing an RFQ or FRP for city attorney services.
Madam Mayor, I think somebody wanted to speak on the previous issue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't see your hand.
Hi, Janet Evans. I wanted to say that I think that that's an exorbitant amount of money. I understand that this has been a process for a long time. I think that it could have been handled very quickly had the people involved, mainly Mr. Walker, followed the 5-0 decision on doing the ordinance. And I also feel that the amount above and beyond his normal retainer fee, it's a lot of money. I am glad to hear that Commissioner Whites has brought this to the public's attention, because when our city is asked to foot the bill for such an item, I think we all need to be aware of it. And I think that it could have been handled better. I think the amount is a lot.
Anyone else from you, please?
Hi, Commission. My name's Wallace Simmons, and I just want to say, pertaining to what Commissioner White's brought to our attention about the bill for the mural ordinance, the legal representation. We've spoken a lot about what the city staff can handle when it comes to permits coming through and reviewing things that pertain to this ordinance, but what we haven't talked about is that there's not a need to reinvent a wheel here. We're a small city, and there are a lot of other cities in the state of Florida and throughout the country that have already done mural ordinances and gone through the same process that are approved. And this is something that the city attorney and the city staff could have worked together to maybe better research what some of these other cities have already put out there. It could have saved time, it could have saved money, it could have saved effort. And I just think that Commissioner White's bringing to our attention the amount of money that was spent on the legal retainer for this above and beyond what Mr. Walker's office already gets is appreciated. And that's all I have to say.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Okay, we got comments on this issue? Nobody? Okay. Then we'll move right along. City Attorney's Report / update.
Should be number 4.
I read 4.
We discussed the breakdown, but we didn't discuss the,
Oh, yeah, we went backwards. That's right. Okay. You want me to read it again? Discuss the current city attorney's contract and placing an RFQ or FRP for city attorney service.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought that it was at least appropriate, out of respect for Commissioner Grunder's place up here, that we bring this up so that he had an opportunity to review the contract as well. We have discussed this on several occasions in recent history, just so you know, Commissioner Grunder. One of the requests that some of us have had was to amend the contract to allow for alternate representation to be sought for perhaps areas that were in more in someone else's wheelhouse. And I think that particular issue is pertinent right now. Given the amount of money we spent on the mural ordinance, I'm certainly not saying that they didn't work all those hours. I'm sure they did. But it was tremendously expensive, and perhaps if we had been able to seek legal counsel that specialized in something like that, because this is kind of an up-and-coming new area, it might have been a little bit more cost-effective. One of my concerns, particularly in regard to this particular process, I was made aware of recently here, where Christie emailed Danielle at Mr. Walker's firm, indicating that the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council is requesting a strike-through version of the mural ordinance. Can you all assist? And Danielle responded, and she said, I meant to call you. There were a bunch of iterations of this ordinance. I will call you on Monday to discuss. I'm just reading from an email. And then Christie says, so from the version the plan board saw and struck through for what they are going to be seeing now. And then Danielle responded, I don't think we have a strike-through version of what they are looking for. We didn't operate off of the same document. We created a new version to reflect new changes made. The best thing would be to run a Microsoft Word comparison between the document originally before the plan board and the document before the plan board now. This will essentially do the same thing for them. So we paid $18,000 for an ordinance that we don't have a track changes version of, and my personal opinion is that that's unacceptable. When I got the Word version of the ordinance the very first time, I made my additions and my amendments to it using track changes and sent that back so that my specific request could be documented, and it was tied directly to me. Absolutely. There have been so many different iterations of this ordinance, and then to find out on November 15th that they didn't even operate off the same document. How do we know? How can we follow the process? So, based on that fact alone and the $18,000 bill that the city has paid, I would like to request that in the contract that you have before you in Section 2 under compensation, paragraph B, where it states right now, matters which are outside the scope of general legal services will be billed at 80% of the attorney's current normal hourly rate. I would like to request that we amend that paragraph to say, for matters which are outside the scope of general legal services, the city retains the right to seek alternate legal counsel at their discretion. Courtesy notification will be provided to the city attorney. So, Madam Mayor, that's my official request before you, please.
All right, anybody else have any comments?
Mayor?
Yes.
Look, this has been in front of us, and I'm not saying that the city isn't growing to the point where it needs to look at how it receives legal services. We might need to have an in-house attorney, but there's a cost to that we currently don't have by contracting out. And Folds & Walker has been responsive to some of the issues that have come up the past few times this has come to us, but we keep bringing up this issue, and a lot of it is based because the members of the commission didn't like some of the answers that they were being given legally. So the issue kept going back to them, and that was what probably drove up the cost. But it definitely isn't standard practice for commissioners to be authoring legal documents, and it's probably a really bad idea. That's what we rely on the attorney and their staff to be doing. And I really don't think we should be talking about us amending a contract, because it is a negotiated contract, which would have to then be totally opened up. And at this point, given it's been in front of us a number of times, and until the city manager comes back for a recommendation that she'd like to alter how we're handling legal services, I don't think we should be having this conversation again and again.
But I'm not new to dealing with attorneys with the city. Unfortunately, no.
Watch it.
However, I was thinking about this a lot, And I agree that an in-house attorney would probably be better for the direction we want to go, I think, in the future. I don't know what that looks like, though, and I don't know how we get to that point. So I think what I would ask is, can we get a cost analysis of exactly what we're paying now, and then what a in-house attorney might cost? And it's absolutely nothing against Mr. Walker at all, but I do know that a lot of cities are kind of going that way. And if we have that much work, it might be nice to have somebody on staff full-time.
Okay, anybody else? What you got to say?
The first time that conversation came up about having
No.
a full-time attorney, but can we afford it? That's the bottom line.
That's the question.
Can we afford it? And from the top of my head, I doubt it very seriously. So, I don't know.
I mean, staff can do the research and email it to y'all.
I think that would be sufficient to satisfy the request by Commissioner Grunder there. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any other comments from anybody?
My name's Janet Evans. I would like to make a couple of points. One is the question comes up, has he really been responsive? Number two, I really liked the point that was made about reinventing the wheel. I also like the point that's been made about the fiscal responsibility that we're all supposed to be looking towards. I think people are aware that when I ran for this position as commissioner 2 years ago, one of the things that the 1,000 people who voted for me had to say was fiscal responsibility was a really important thing for them. I brought to the table my experience in the education system, with one of the positions I held being a director of special programs, where I helped to oversee the fiscal work for an entire city school district in New York. I'd like to bring up, as far as our hiring and firing policy was, when someone employed by the district did not do what they were specifically directed to do, we called that insubordination, and that alone was reason for having someone terminated from their position. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was whenever a contract comes due, we need to reevaluate that contract. And I think that if it comes up at every meeting, because we have situations where Mr. Walker specifically does not do what is assigned by 5-0 votes, I don't care if it's every single meeting. When decisions like that are made that end up costing our city $18,000 because the wheel didn't need to be reinvented, because you weren't able to compare documents coming through, when the work, the quality of the work is questioned, I am really, really pleased as a member of the community to have that stuff consistently reviewed.
Okay, no one. Okay, commissioners, what's your pledge?
Madam Mayor, I guess I would make a motion that we amend the attorney's contract as requested.
Okay, there's no second. So that dies. Okay. Item I. City Attorney Report / update.
Madam Mayor, the ethics review will be at our office on December 14th. We'll start at 4 o'clock. You are statutorily required, and particularly for our new commissioner, I want to invite you to our office as well.
I'll be there.
Okay, good deal. And we'll start at 4, and we'll take a little break for something to eat, and then get back at it. But this will meet your statutory requisite for the 4 hours that is required by the Florida statutes. So this will make that happen. Hopefully, we make it a little bit of fun as well, and so it won't be a too bad of an experience of 4 hours. But we'll look forward to anyone that wants to come. Let us know if you're coming, if you would, please, so that we can make sure we have enough drinks and eats and all that kind of thing, but y'all are certainly welcome to come on. That's all I had, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager.
Okay, so I have a couple announcements. December 8th, the commission meeting will be at the Civic Center because the elevator is going to be worked on. So from a handicap accessibility, it will not be handicap. This upstairs will not be accessible. So please mark your calendars accordingly. This Saturday at 6 p.m. is the tree lighting out near the chamber offices. Next Saturday at 6 p.m. is the parade that starts at the Civic Center. It runs through Main Street and ends up near the chamber offices. Also, the facility plan at the last meeting for water and wastewater, y'all requested larger documents. Those have been placed in your boxes, so y'all can pick that up anytime. The other thing is bids came in for the road improvements. I'll let Bruce talk about that, but they came in pretty good. Dave passed his first code compliance exam, Dave Sutton. So we're really proud of him for that. So he's rocking along in that area, and we think we'll see some positive results this year.
Okay. Mr. Gillingham?
Third well, we're waiting on the wellhead to come in for it to be set. Should be in the end of this week. It should go on the following week, and testing will start taking place of the water at that point in time. Main lift sewer part should be in this Friday. They're supposed to start work next week, so that should fix that issue. We've already talked about the tree lighting. Downtown Christmas decorations are up, if you haven't noticed. The tree's here. It's in the wrong spot, and it's going to be moved, but it's here. just pointing that out. The CDBG project we've been working on down here, the company was bought out. There's been some things going on, but we finally have about the majority of that wrapped up. It's about 99% complete. Should be done over the next couple of weeks. The last little bit should have been done today on some things, and there's some driveways, a couple things that need to be cleaned up, and that should be done. Outside of that, she covered the the elevator. They're going to start working on that next week, and hopefully by the first meeting in January it'll be done. If not, we'll have to do the first meeting in January at the Civic Center again, and then we should be back in this building by the end of January. I had one other thing with Parks and Recs, I believe. Hold on, let me look at my notes here. The Frozen Foot is coming up. That will be February 11th, just to let you know. We got a soccer camp coming up. Soccer Stars out of originally New Jersey. They're out of all over the place to have an affiliation here in Florida. They will be coming up doing a soccer camp for our kids in our youth program again over the winter months. There is a practice event for robotics being held at the Legacy Center in Alachua Saturday as well, starting at 9 a.m. if anybody would like to go out and see what the robotics program is about. It is a practice event for the qualifiers that start in January. Our robotics team's hosting it. Alachua was nice enough to allow us to use the Legacy Center, so we're doing a joint deal with their recreation center. We have 13.
What's that date?
This Saturday, the 3rd. So it starts at 9 a.m. We'll run until about 2. And then the robotics kids will also be in the Christmas parade as well, along with some of the youth soccer kids and things like that from our youth sports programs will be participating as well. That'll be on the 10th. Outside of that, that's all I got going on right now, other than Parks and Rec's got a grant from Duke Energy to resurface some courts, and they're going to be doing the Walter Howard Park to resurface and do some grinding on those courts to get them redone. That's all I got.
Thank you. Our newest commissioner down there.
I think I've talked enough for tonight. Thank you. No, congratulations, David, on getting that passed. Thank you, Ms. Janet Evans. Appreciate that. No, thank you all.
Okay.
I want to thank Ashley and Chief Shepherd. We got a bizarre text on Sunday night, and I didn't know what it was. I texted Ashley. She texted me right back, and Chief Shepherd called me within like 2 minutes. It's okay, that's real. Only in a place like High Springs can you get that kind of connection. So thank you so much, Chief. I appreciate it. And Madam Mayor, I'd like to, if it's the will of the commission, maybe look into getting the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council going. If everybody would be agreeable, I think we need to seat 7 kids. So I think maybe if all of us knew a couple of kids that might be willing, I think the requirements that they have to be in grades 8 through 12, and they serve a variety of terms in terms of the length of their term. But I think it would be a really, really cool opportunity to involve our young people, go into different schools in the county. They don't have to go to school here if they live in High Springs, but they might go to Eastside High School or, First Christian, get some real diverse input. And I think it would just be a really cool opportunity for us to engage the youth. So if that's something you would consider, I'd appreciate it.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you.
Bruce, I don't know, David, whoever, not David. The lights look wonderful. I've got several calls on how nice the lights are this year, so great job. I remember the days when some bulbs was working and some bulbs wouldn't, but it looks so much better. And also, a longtime resident and businessman of this community died on past Friday, Gene Carter. They used to own the hardware store and once owned the funeral home over here. So let's keep this family in prayer. Very good friend of mine. And his wake service would be from 5 to 7 on Saturday night at First Baptist. And his service would be this Sunday at 2 p.m. at First Baptist. So again, let's keep this family in our prayers. Again, he was a pillar in this community. That's all I have.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah. Microphone. Yeah, I've had some communication, and I think all the commissioners were emailing by one person in particular about trash pickup, but I'm having issues in my neighborhood too, and brush, and I guess I'd be interested from city staff, since you track calls, from when we put them on notice that we might be looking to renew their contract, and they responded by coming and visiting and speaking with us, which was a number of months ago. And now, are we seeing an increase again, and do we know why that is? And that can come in a report or an email or whatever if you want to do, or if you've got something to say now, that'd be fine too, but.
I can speak wholeheartedly on behalf of the staff. We are sick and tired of dealing with our current trash company, period. It is taking up so much staff time with finance, public works, city hall staff up here, utility billing. It is an absolute nightmare. We're getting missed calls every day. They're not showing up on Fridays. They're supposed to be here on Saturday. Half's getting picked up. They're not picking up yard debris. They're not picking up this. You have to stand outside and physically tell them to grab your stuff in the yard. It's.
So.
I am willing to say if you poll the city right now, about 85% of the citizens are gonna say, get rid of them.
So can staff coordinate with the attorney what the requirements are in the contract, and we begin considering as a commission whether or not we'll be looking for a new provider?
wish of this commission for us to pursue looking at that, we will wholeheartedly please get,
It is.
thank you.
You got my,
Okay.
you got my blessings on
Their,
that.
their response during the
They didn't pick
hurricane,
mine up at all last time.
their response during the last two hurricanes and when they would provide us information to give to the citizens was absolutely horrible.
Okay, so that was item one. And then, with the election, the county passed renewed wild spaces and implemented an infrastructure tax. I guess I'd like some reporting back from staff on, when wild spaces was originally proposed, we had a plan on what we would do over X number of years with those funds. So now that it's been renewed, I think we need to be developing that. Maybe the Parks Board is already taking a look at that, but something should be coming back to us. And I know the roads came in better. You were gonna mention something about that, but, it's like, okay, we've got this infrastructure tax. How do we leverage it, given that we know its income for X number of years, to really make sure it has an impact for the citizens?
Right, so there's two parts. You have the first half cent, which is still wild spaces, public places, which still applies to parks. Then you have the second half, which is the infrastructure tax, which can be used for a multitude of items, one of which being infrastructure roads, fire stations, affordable housing. There's a lot of things. Thomas and I have been talking a lot about some ideas. We got a lot of things going on the roadside that we need to do. The road quotes came in cheaper than what we originally thought they were. It came in a lot better than what we budgeted, almost to the point of we still have half the money to look at doing additional roads with. So there'll be some further discussion on that. So we'll probably be going back out again. So I know everybody's gonna be excited to hear this, but the city manager is looking at doing some strategic planning, and I believe in January.
That was exactly what I was gonna say, is that we're going to be trying to do this, not trying, we are going to do strategic planning in January, when I can get y'all all together. And the Parks Master Plan will also hash out a lot. We're starting that process. Public meetings will be held in January as well. There's gonna be 4 public meetings and some focus group meetings. So we've already had the meeting with GAI. Bruce, Damon, and I were all in it. We've already scheduled some of those. I'll get you the schedule to you. And so through that process, you will be, the community will be providing input, and y'all will be endorsing future projects.
So to keep it short, staff's compiling their list now, so we have some stuff together for strategic planning, and so we can go with the advisory boards.
So 25 days before Christmas, you're compiling your lists and checking it twice?
You want to play the pun? Yes.
Okay.
That's it? Oh, okay. Well, I don't have anything specific, but I do want to say thank you to your citizens for coming out and spending the time with us tonight. We appreciate your input. And to everybody here, you commissioners, I thank you for your input tonight. With that, I will entertain